Hello and welcome to the new Book of Daniel podcast. My name is Daniel Bobinski and I'll be your host on this adventure. This podcast is about faith, family, finances, fitness, forte, fortress, and fun and foundations, which is most of what we talk about in this podcast. That's my F system I just described. You can find out more about that F system in the first episode of the podcast, where I explain that F system in detail. But today we have a very special guest. I'll talk about that in a minute. I first want to tell you that the show is sponsored by Workplace Excellence, which you can find at myworkplaceexcellence.com. This happens to be my company. Since we don't have a Patreon account or any other way to help sponsor right now, so I'm sponsoring the podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can do that by going to myworkplaceexcellence.com. And I've got a special for people who are watching the podcast. You can get a DISC assessment, which is a behavioral styles assessment, and 2 coaching sessions for only, only $195. $195 is a screaming deal. I've been doing one-on-one coaching, team training for 30 years, working one-on-one with executives, managers, and individuals, everybody from mom and pop people to senior executives of multi-billion-dollar corporations, and also team training. And we help people understand themselves better and how to do so: self-awareness, self-management, work management, relationship management. And the results are increased productivity, increased profitability, increased effectiveness across the board. If you want to know more about yourself, how you tick, how to manage yourself better, take advantage of this special offer, $195 for a DISC assessment and 2 coaching sessions. I want to put the link in the show notes. You can go there, click on it. And when I get that email, I will contact you and set you up with the assessment and the 2 coaching sessions, which we can do like this over Zoom or Skype or even a phone call anywhere in the world. I've been doing this, like I say, for 30 years. So myworkplaceexcellence.com, or just go to the show notes and click that link. Okay, let's get on with this special impeachment episode of this podcast. I have not been talking much about impeachment because everybody else has been talking about impeachment. And I've not been watching much about the impeachment because I just kind of catch the highlights, right, in social media. A lot of the people out there who don't track social media much, or who knows, what they're getting their information from mainstream media, what we used to call mainstream media. We're going to replace that. We're going to be the mainstream media, so we're kind of calling them legacy media, all the network news. And I've got a friend who talks about how bad it's going for President Trump. That's all you're hearing out there, right? Well, someone's been watching this stuff, gavel-to-gavel, and that's Ms. Tracy Beanz. She's the editor-in-chief and founder of UncoverDC.com. She is got a nose for news. She gets her little spidey senses up, and then, I've known her for about 5 months or so, and in that short time, I've really come to respect her integrity and her voraciousness to follow a story. If someone were to ask me how to describe her, I'd kind of call her a badger because she just goes after it. But she's got this investigative journal just in her DNA. She wants to go after stories and track them down. In fact, she was key in uncovering some corruption between former Attorney General Loretta Lynch and Andrew McCabe when they threatened the New York office of the FBI for the Clinton email investigation. She was one of the first people to do an hour-long interview with George Papadopoulos after he got out of prison. She's very well known for her in-depth coverage on the spy scandal leading up to President Trump's election, all the stuff that the deep state was doing there. She has, before starting UncoverDC, she was very strongly active in politics. She was a high-level player in Ron Paul's 2008 campaign. She worked on Donald Trump's presidential campaign. She's on the board of directors for the Walk Away movement, Walk Away Foundation. And she's a very outspoken, frequent guest on radio and TV. She's a speaker at conferences and rallies. I am very honored to have, as my very first guest on the new Book of Daniel podcast, Ms. Tracy Beanz. Let's go now to my conversation with her. All right, well, here we are, Ms. Tracy Beanz. Good morning.
Hello.
Good
Hello,
afternoon.
Daniel. Good afternoon.
Wherever you are, right? So it is an honor to have you with us today. This is my very first guest ever on this
Ooh,
podcast, so you have that distinct honor.
wow. That's something. That's awesome. Thank you.
So tell us, I want to hear a little bit of background about, just in a nutshell, why Uncover DC?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, because there was nothing else out there that I was excited about really, and I wanted to do it myself because I figure if you want to do something right, do it yourself. Um there were like a number of things about, like, there's a great independent media and great even more established media out there, the Federalist, Epoch Times, a number of different outlets, but
Lots of great independent media out there.
absolutely. I just think that there are some things that we can do better and do differently. And I just figured, why not try that myself? So here we are.
Well, you certainly have a passion for this. I'm not sure where the world would be without Tracy Beanz.
Oh gosh, stop it.
You, the Uncover DC is really a great handle for this. It's a great title because you have a, I was talking to someone the other day about you, and I said, she's kind of like a badger. When she sees something, she's
Oh,
just going to go after it. And so when you smell, and you have that, the phrase you use is spidey sense. When you sense a story, you just go after it. So I really admire that about you. I just want to tip my hat and say thanks for doing it.
well, thank you. And I will say in return that one of the best things to happen to Uncover DC so far is you coming along randomly
Uh,
one day. You're a brilliant writer and you contribute so much to what we're doing. And
love
over
to
the
hear.
course of the past, 4 or 5 months or so, I've gotten to know you real well, and it's just been a better experience. So thank you,
Well,
Dave.
I'm really glad to be on the team. Thanks for bringing me on, because
Yeah.
as I said in my first podcast, I've always wanted to write about politics. For 30 years, I've been writing about workplace issues and faith and family issues for different magazines, different publications, and always kind of a political junkie. So to have this opportunity that you gave me is awesome. I really appreciate allowing me to vent a little bit.
Bent away. That's why we're here.
So, so the reason I wanted to have you on as a guest is I know that most of America has been watching the impeachment trial from afar. It actually has lower ratings than daytime soap operas. So you,
Saying something.
however, you, however, have been masochistically glued to the TV
Yeah.
watching this go on. And so here it is. This is a Saturday recording. The impeachment has, in essence, been done. The trial in the Senate has, in essence, been done. They're going to vote on Wednesday. Can you just give me, just right off the top, I want to get a little bit deep here in a second, but right off the top, what's been your biggest aha/feedback,
The
insight?
biggest the biggest insight is that whereas in the past 20 or 30 years the Democrats have done a fairly good job of hiding their true character, and even some Republicans, obviously, they've done a really good job of hiding their true character. But I think that at this point, it's no holds barred, and everything is out in the open for everyone to see. I've been absolutely disgusted at the performance from some of these people. And I said yesterday on my podcast, like, I'm struggling to find the words to explain how horrifying it really is. Like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, what a joke. This impeachment, it's such a joke, but it's really not, in my opinion. It never has been from the very beginning, because they are destroying everything that's good about this country, our justice system. Uh,
Selfishly so.
I don't know what it has to be inside someone's soul to be able to stand up there and do what Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler and the rest of them did. We'll put it that way.
Okay. And as I interrupted there, to me, it's selfish. It's selfishness on their part.
But it is. But, like, what do they think they're gaining? Like, clearly, they're not going to be able to vote to have this president impeached. They're not going to win that. What they've effectively done is drive 60 to 65% of the country, if not a few percentage points more, away from them in droves. So it's always been for me like really troubling to see how much they're willing to sacrifice to what end. And I don't think that we've figured that out yet. I do not know what their end game is. That's the thing that's been irking me the most.
So I have a hypothesis on that. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that they know that they were not going to win in November. I think that's a given.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that they are embarrassed as all get out. And I'm not just talking about the political left. I'm talking about the elite in this country, the establishment on both sides of the aisle, that they were embarrassed that they lost to what some people call a populist, a person who ran as a Republican, who used to be a Democrat, used to identify as a Democrat, identifies clearly as a Republican, right? Clearly as in my opinion, a constitutionalist. He wants to bring the country back to its founding principles, the way I'm looking at it. And I admit I was a Trump skeptic. I was like, this guy's going to do this. He's very bombastic. But I think the deep state was embarrassed, and they had to find a way to make him look bad. How can this guy who's never been in an elected office come in and make things happen inside of 3 years that they could never do? So it was embarrassing to them. They needed to punch him in the eye back. It was a punch in the eye back. That's part one. Part two, they knew they were going to lose in November. So, or I'm back to part one, I guess, but they knew they were going to lose. And so they have to have a reason as to why they're going to lose. And just this morning, Mr. Schumer tweeted out that I put forth 4 amendments for witnesses, and the Republicans continue to vote to cover it all up. This is just a cover up.
Yeah.
That's going to be they're creating talking points for this coming election. That's my theory.
I think theory number 2 is the more strong, in my opinion, of your 2 theories. I think if you're absolutely right. Theory number 1, things that they could never do. It's not that they could never do them. Anybody could have done these things. It's that they didn't want to, which I think is the bigger problem, is that if they wanted prosperity for America, they would have done these things. And at the end of the day, they don't want prosperity for America. That's blatantly obvious. Why is it doing this right now? Hold on. Sorry. That's blatantly obvious. So given we know that's clear, we see Brexit, we see the UK leaving the European Union this week. We see this wave of change, globalism's going by the wayside. And this is what they have spent the Ukraine story is a story of globalism. And they've spent their decades trying to get us to where that would be, the accepted version of the world, globalism. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that somebody came along and put such a huge dent in those plans, I think is more retaliatory towards him in that sense, like you said, than, oh God, we're embarrassed we couldn't do it. I think they're embarrassed they got caught not wanting to do it.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that, because that's actually been part of my argument along the way. In fact, I've written about this on UncoverDC. Mm-hmm. A lot of folks don't know about the Hegelian dialectic, right? Yep. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And as you said, for decades, it's been 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, and then the Republicans or the Patriots will go, no, and then, oh, sorry, and then, well, you have to negotiate with us, and they'll take a step back, but they've gained that step. Yeah. And they've been doing that for decades, 100 years they've been doing that. So now I think what happened was Obama got cocky, and the entire organization of the deep state got cocky, mm-hmm. because Obama was Teflon. Nothing he could do was wrong. And the media covered for him so well that hey, if they disagree, we just call them racists and we keep going. So you have progress with no steps back, and the population goes, whoa, wait a minute. In comes Trump. Stop. So yes, you're right. Brexit, and then Brazil, same thing. Mm-hmm. Where we have a president coming in there who's
Ukraine.
What do you make? And let's go back to the impeachment thing. What do you make of the White House's President Trump's defense team? I have some thoughts, but I really want to hear yours.
Okay.
Because you've been watching it. I haven't. I've just been watching the little clips here and there on social media.
You know, a lot of people said how impressed they were, and I wasn't, and I'm probably on the outside of this, or like an outlier on it probably. But, you know, while the theory and the constitutional law and the you know, principles that they argued were very well prepared and very smart and very important, I guess you could say, like they're not talking to people that have integrity or people that have, you know, they're talking to a different audience, normal people with logical brains, and, you know, they were preaching to the wrong choir. You know, while a lot of the senators wanted to hear these things, like the Mike Lees of the world, the Ted Cruzes of the world, they think, you know, precedent's important, and what we're doing right now will set precedent for years. We're at such a sort of like banana republic sort of stage in our country that,
without the
banana. Yeah. So Pam Bondi's whole thing was great, but they could have done a much better job. Like, I feel like they allowed the Democrats to lie with impunity about certain things that they could have countered while still making the arguments that they should have been making about precedent and their reasons for not giving evidence. And they didn't take that opportunity to just smash them down. They let them walk all over the court, because that's what they claim this is that we're sitting in front of, is a court. So they let the left walk all over the court, breaking every rule and norm. Adam Schiff creating conversations that never happened as hypotheticals about Israel and all. I mean, I don't know, Daniel, you say you didn't watch it. I mean, you should have seen some of I called it Adam Schiff story time, because he would come up there and he would concoct entire theories based on conversations that never happened. They would accuse the president of bribery and crimes they didn't include in the charges. That would have been completely thrown out of court, in any court in America, in any trial, immediately. But the Chief Justice just sat there. Mm-hmm. You know, they would proclaim that there was no question, that all of this evidence was uncontested. And then the defense wouldn't say, we're contesting it. Like, they said it, but it was like, we're contesting the evidence. We're like so meek. It's enough of that. And I wasn't impressed. I really wasn't. And then Dershowitz had some really, well, they may have, if you were having a debate with a bunch of people that were very philosophical scholars, and you advanced some of the arguments that Dershowitz had advanced, then I could understand the conversation. But he never should have done half the things that he did in this environment. So why give people more ammo?
So I think you nailed it. I think the House managers realized that they weren't talking to the Senate. Mm-hmm. They were talking to the people. They were talking to the cameras, and they were creating sound bites and arguments to use in the campaign. I think you're right. I think the president's attorneys were speaking to the Senate in a philosophical, this is why this impeachment shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
I was watching a clip here and there, and Schiff would do like what you said. He'd get up and concoct some fabricated, illogical leap. And I was shocked that nobody would get up and say, this is a fabrication.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, They took the time, like the Democrat side, the House managers took the time to contest some of the things that the defense counsel said in the beginning before they started answering the question that was presented to them. There's literally, and at the end of the day, Danielle, as much as they speak to the senators, there's still, this whole entire impeachment as a whole is driven by public perception and public sentiment and the body politic. Mm-hmm. So they are technically playing to the American people at the end of the day, because if the American people turn, What those senators want doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what their voters want. So the audience is clear. So like in that realm of like process and procedure, we are finished. I mean, in this perspective, I think I speak for a lot of people. I want these people smacked down. Enough is enough already. I don't understand how they can get away with this anymore. Somebody needs to do something about this. It is getting ridiculous.
And I couldn't agree more, which is why we're doing this podcast, by the way, because I want people to learn about this stuff. I don't think that we have an honest media. I've got a good friend of mine who was raised a Democrat, okay? Actually, his parents were Republicans. He chose to be a Democrat. And he was telling me he caught so much grief, and his family gatherings were always argumentative because he was a Democrat and his parents were Republicans. And he's telling me, he's actually, by the way, now moved away after all this fiasco. He's actually
moved away from the left.
Yeah, he's moved away from the left. He says, it's obvious how much fakeness is going on here, how much of a charade this is. But he says, it's really bad when I'm watching TV. It looks really bad for President Trump.
Yes.
Because, and he's on President Trump's side, but he's not watching it like you are. He's not watching it like I am. He's just watching, he's not into politics as much as you and I might be. But there's so many people out there like that.
Yeah.
They may have even walked away from the Democratic side of things and they're supporting Trump, but they're watching that TV going, he's getting nailed.
I put myself into those shoes a lot, actually, while I was watching, because if you listen to what these people on the House manager team are saying, it sounds really horrible for President Trump. And most Americans are not doing what we're doing, like you just said. And that's why I really feel I have spent the past several days scouring the FCC regulations for where they're breaking the law in several different places, because for them to stop airing the defense's presentation after airing the entire 18 to 20 hour House manager's presentation is criminal. It is criminal what they're doing. At the end of the day,
are you saying that literally, or are you saying that with hyperbole?
No, I'm actually saying it literally, because
they are breaking laws.
Yes, because technically, and a good lawyer could probably prove this, there are laws about equal time for candidates. So if you wanted to get crafty, you could pull a few different statutes from the FCC and string them together to make the argument that either A, they are blatantly misleading people that could lead to panic because it's the impeachment of the president. And news stations aren't allowed to come on and lie about a pandemic or lie about a mass murderer running through the streets or lie about anything that could cause the public to freak, right? In my opinion, them doing this has done nothing but cause the public to freak, because at the core of why the left hates the president so much are all of the lies that have been told about the president.
So this actually leads to a point that I wanted to talk about. And that is punishment for crimes. I think, and I know I've talked to several people who agree with, and you may agree with me too, but the idea here is that these people have broken the law just in how they went about doing the impeachment.
Yeah.
How they started. And Brian, on UncoverDC, Brian Cates has a great piece. And if you've not read it, folks out there, go to UncoverDC.com and read this article by Brian Cates called "Trump Defense to Call Democrats Bluff." That's the title of the piece. And he outlines in excellent fashion how Nancy Pelosi set this impeachment up. It was never voted on in the House. So
this is the argument we heard over and over again, Daniel, about these subpoenas, because that's one of the things the Democrats used in their obstruction, the fact that the president wouldn't respond to subpoenas.
Because the subpoenas had no teeth.
Exactly. And so the defense team spent hours explaining that, and it didn't matter because the left would come up and just say it again. It didn't even happen.
But yes.
Same thing. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Same thing about how they were saying in the Clinton trial, there were witnesses. In the Clinton impeachment trial in the Senate, there were not brand new witnesses. They're lying to you. The witnesses that were called were part of the Starr independent counsel
who had all been deposed in the House
exactly
prior to coming to the Senate.
Precisely. Yes.
So it's kind of funny because I talk to my wife about this. I said, if there's going to be any kind of witnesses, there should be only witnesses for President Trump, because the only witnesses
they got their chance.
They never had a chance in the House. There was no witnesses. What was amazing to me was Jerry Nadler's committee. Who was it? I forget the Republican guy. He says, "I want to call witnesses," and Nadler says, "You can call witnesses after we vote." It's like,
well, the craziest thing too is that people may forget Molly Hemingway from the Federalist was on an Acela train down from New York to DC and overheard Jerry Nadler talking about impeaching the president in from 2018 onward. It was their goal the whole entire time. We know that already.
Yes.
So this is why there was this shift. Nadler completely screwed up the impeachment of Donald Trump with the Mueller hearings. He messed it up. He had his chance. He screwed it up. They shifted it over to Adam Schiff, no pun, right? Then Adam Schiff, obviously the most disgusting creature I've ever encountered in my entire life.
Pathological liar. Yes.
I mean, it is sick. He is evil. He took it upon himself. And this is why we saw the other day Schiff and Nadler fighting for the microphone, because Nadler would open his mouth in these hearings, Daniel, and completely screw up what he was supposed to do. He was too honest about everything. He said that they needed to bring the president to heel. That's what they said.
Isn't that amazing?
He said that. So this entire thing, that the fundamentals of it, the subpoenas had no teeth. They have the nerve to actually suggest, this was their argument yesterday when they were kind of closing before the vote, that, listen, guys, I'm going to do a shifty story time. This is what he does. So the Democrats are saying, guys, don't worry in the Senate. We know you guys are busy. We'll take care of everything. We'll call in Bolton. We'll call in Mulvaney. We'll depose them. It'll take us a week. And then we'll work with the Chief Justice to determine what's valid and what's not. And no cross-exam, no witnesses called from the president. They were just saying, give us more time to do our job that we didn't do, even though we had another month, clearly, because Nancy Pelosi held the articles. Give us the chance to do our job. It'll only take a week. Don't worry. We'll get it taken care of. And you guys don't have to worry about cross-examination or anything. And Sekulow, he was one of the best attorneys they had outside of Starr, would stand up there and say, he said, this is absolutely ridiculous. We haven't cross-examined any of these people. We haven't been allowed to cross-examine even one of these 18 or 17 witnesses, the one which we cannot see, Michael Atkinson, which is a whole nother story. We haven't been able to cross them at all. It's almost like this, and then, you got me started. And then the complaint itself was completely false. The thing that started this entire impeachment was a lie. There was nothing true in it at all, other than that there was a phone call. It's like you, Daniel, being approached by the police and them saying to you, you robbed a bank last Saturday. So-and-so told me you did. And then you saying, here's the tape from the bank. I wasn't even there. I was in another town. And them saying, oh, well, that sucks. We're taking you to trial anyway. And then the prosecution not letting you defend yourself throughout the entire thing, even and then completely telling the jury that what was on that tape was something that wasn't even on it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. This is what they've done. Mm-hmm.
Which is why I saw Kamala Harris tweet out the other day that we have to have witnesses or it's not a fair trial. And so I would say, well, wait a minute, fair trial. The House didn't allow Trump to have a lawyer present. They didn't allow any witnesses. They didn't allow the transcripts of any of those other depositions to be made known. They only selective leaking. They didn't let anybody see anything. So where is fair? Fairness starts at the beginning. But the media is being so compliant and not reporting any of that. The lamestream media, the legacy media, They're not reporting any of this, none of this. And that's why I want anybody listening to this, watching this, to say, hey, stop getting all your news from legacy media. Look at the independents, because you're going to get a different perspective, and then make your decisions.
And we've been able to really affect a lot of good change in the independent space over the past couple of years. Little old me, mom of two that worked in corporate America, was tweeting things out that were getting picked up by other bigger independent outlets at the time, and spreading that way. And, it's getting to the point where, yeah, Twitter is not real life, but you've got now congressmen and senators doing their own podcasts to get to people the way, in a way that we weren't able to do before. So it's all changing. It really is all changing. It's encouraging. So as much as it's frustrating that a lot of America doesn't watch what we're doing here, I have a plan to change that. And so far it's been working. And if I tell you what the plan is, then they'll know what it is. So I can't tell you, right, but it's working.
Good. Good. Well, I mean, you've got an impact. You've got, what, 174,000 followers on Twitter. So
thankfully,
you're making an impact.
Thankfully.
But Twitter is coming out with these new rules. Tell us about that. They got this new rule coming out.
Political misinformation, David.
A lot of folks don't know about this yet. This is just brand new.
You can report tweets for political misinformation, or what we would do, and this is kind of funny, back in the midterms, we would tweet, not me, but people would tweet and say, today's election day, only Democrats can vote today, or only Republicans vote on Thursday, which was the actual election day. Tuesday. Well, whatever, whatever the day is, they would say only Republicans can vote this day and only Democrats can vote this day. And the day the Democrats,
obviously
right.
A joke.
But we're effective because we're the counterculture. So the fact that we would say things like that would cause people to not vote. So now they've got these rules that you can't do that, or you'll be suspended. You can't share misleading information about campaigns. Who determines that?
That's the key question. Who determines?
Right. And to be quite honest with you, their fact is subjective. It is not objective. We've lost objective fact. I could show you documents don't even do it for them anymore. No. So I don't know where we go from here, but I will say that the Department of Justice brought in a new task force just recently that they've seated to laser in on antitrust. And so I think we're going to be seeing some changes in the very short term, because they know how important it is.
Well, okay. Yeah. So today we consider the gas coming to our house, the gas company. They are a public utility.
Yep.
They didn't start off that way. They started off as private companies. Electric company, same thing. Right. So you had these private companies providing these services, but then the society at large decided, oh, these are public services, they need to be public utilities, and they switched over. And I think the same thing is ready for social media, these large platforms.
Yeah, because they either have to do that or they have to say that they're publishers. I believe that's the right way. I might be getting it backwards right now, but basically they escape any liability for what people say on their platform, because it's open and free and anybody can say whatever they want, right? So they escape liability for that, but they don't treat everyone the same. So they take that away. They take that protection away, and that's at the stake of it. Can you imagine if the gentleman who shot up the baseball field that we never hear about, that was a raging Bernie supporter, announced it on Twitter, and then the family of, God forbid, anyone killed could come to Twitter and sue them for allowing Bernie Sanders' person to say these things? This is what's at issue here. It's a liability thing for them, but they can't have it both ways.
They try to walk that line.
Right.
And they have to choose one or the other. And personally, I think it needs to become public utilities. That's just my own feeling.
Yeah, I struggle, and I'm sure you do too, given your descriptor for yourself about government intervention into things like this. But
not a fan, right?
Yeah,
not a fan.
I'm not a fan of this Internet Bill of Rights that was very popular for a long time. And I got pretty lambasted for speaking out against it. But there, at the end of the day, principles are principles. Like, look at what's happened already. You're going to give them more power? Please, for goodness sakes, think again.
Well, it's scary what's out there. I mean, the things we could talk about here. All right. So we have about 15 minutes left, roughly. And I have, thank you, by the way, for your impeachment insights.
Oh, yeah, we could have gone forever on that.
We know he's going to be acquitted because they can't pull 2/3 of the Senate's votes for that.
Yeah.
They're not even getting 50% to vote for witnesses. So,
well, those votes were great, by the way, to table yesterday. We were having a text conversation, and I would interrupt it with, my gosh, I can't believe they're actually putting amendments forth to interview individual witnesses, and they were all tabled, all of them. Some of them with a bigger margin than others, but yeah.
Well, just for anybody listening, who just to put a piece of icing on that cake is, all those witnesses should have been called in the House.
Yeah.
Should have been called in the House. And my wife used to work in the courts. She clerked for a judge, and she's been watching it about as much as I have, even less, and saying this is so screwy that they didn't do any of this in the House, and they've come to this case to be tried, and there's no case to be tried. So now they're trying to lay it on President Trump. And if you've not been watching it, that's exactly what's happened. They didn't do their job. They're trying to get the Senate to do their job and then blame the Senate for not doing their job.
Yep.
And I think it sets horrible precedent. It will for all eternity, it will be so bad for this country if they call even one witness in the Senate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should we have heard from some of these people? Absolutely. Well, should Trump have the right to examine Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and all this stuff? Absolutely. But all of that should have happened in the House. If the Senate interviews even one witness, then in perpetuity, all the House has to do is pass an impeachment article, and it goes to that, and then the Senate tries it again. So it totally violates what was set up in the Constitution.
I'm going to stay with you for your full 5 and 5 and, the 15 segment that we're going to do because it's fun. But I want to say before we end, the Democrats have this practice where they put things forth and they change precedent because it suits them at the time, and then they kick and scream and whine and say how unfair it is. Either let's just remember Supreme Court nominations. That was all their fault. What else? There were other things. There was the nuclear option, I believe, was the Democrats' fault as well. So they've made their own bed thinking they were going to be in power forever and gotten kicked over. And we really need to make sure that we take we take the House back at the very least and widen that margin in the Senate, because we need to get rid of the Collinsons of the world.
It's going to be a very contentious election season, I predict.
Yeah. Yep.
Very contentious. All right. So for those of you who've been watching the podcast, you know that I'm trial ballooning this idea of 5 and 15, right? Try to cover 5 topics in 15 minutes. I don't think Tracy and I are going to get through 5 topics in 15 minutes because
we're going to.
I have a tough time getting through 5 topics in 15 by myself.
We're going to do it like rapid fire, like a game show.
The first one's a little self-serving. I've got a column coming out on UncoverDC on today. This lexicon that the Homeland Security Department put out back within 2 months of the Obama administration. They put out this lexicon that says, if you're like Christian patriot, you are a domestic extremist. And there's actually a petition out there to sign, and I don't think it's going to pass because it doesn't even have 1,000 signatures yet, and they've only got 2 weeks left to go. You need 100,000 signatures to get it to pass. I think it's worded wrongly on the petition, but basically they're saying, President Trump, please revisit this lexicon. Please have DHS revisit the lexicon, because if you're a Christian and a patriot, it doesn't make you a terrorist. Your thoughts, Tracy?
The conspiracy theory label that was thrown out from that action, I know, because when it happened, I was an activist and I was fighting against it, and people thought that I was absolutely nuts. Nobody really much cared. It went kind of, under the radar, except for in the, 3%er, Oath Keeper, libertarian, Ron Paul supporting circles, which were big, but not like they are today. And I think a lot of people are going to be reintroduced to this because of the article, because we'll start talking about it more and we'll understand what happened and try and fix it.
So my take on it is, this is why it needs to be changed. if we don't change it, when the deep state / elitists, because they were on both sides of the aisle, I don't like saying political left because it's the deep state, period. Both sides of the aisle say, well, we're going to apprehend you. This has been on the books since 2009. So what are you first now bringing it up? And look at what Adam Schiff has done with different, stretching the truth, so to speak. So it's a principle. It needs to be addressed. That's my take. All right. Second take up is this this Brian Cates. We've already talked about this. The Brian Cates article on UncoverDC about these fake subpoenas. I love the story where they subpoenaed somebody from the White House and he went to a judge to say, do I have to comply? And they ran to the judge and said, no, we withdraw the subpoena.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
They knew that they were ridiculous. Like, and we made the point was made several times. Brian has a very awesome and unique way of approaching topics like this. So I really like reading him when he does it like that.
Good stuff. All right. So Ms. Hillary Clinton, at one point in time in this Trump fiasco, she said, Richard Nixon once made this argument, when the president does it, that means that it's not illegal. He was forced to resign in disgrace. In America, no one is above the law. So that's her tweet, right? No, in America, no one is above the law. So she called Tulsi Gabbard, who I'm not a fan of, by the way. I know you aren't either. But she called Tulsi Gabbard a Russian asset.
Yes.
And so Tulsi Gabbard is suing Hillary Clinton.
But she can't serve her the lawsuit.
But Hillary Clinton refuses to accept the service.
Because no one's above the law, Daniel. I mean, no one
is above the law.
Not Jeffrey Epstein, not Harvey Weinstein, not Hillary Clinton, not Joe Biden, not Obama, not Jim Comey, not Andrew McCabe, not Peter Strzok, not Lisa Page.
They're not. And this goes back to what I started to say earlier. If these people don't get punished, if there is no process of any kind of legal retribution to these people who've done all these illegal things, and then after this impeachment, we've got a window of time where something has to be some retribution, or they're going to be emboldened and keep doing it. Your thoughts?
If there's no accountability for any of this, we don't have a country anymore, and I think it'll get really ugly here. It really will. Frank and I have talked a bunch on our show about how people are, when JFK was president, it was really easy to get away with what they got away with because nobody had cell phone cameras. Nobody was filming things. So they've had to change the way they incapacitate people that they don't want around anymore. They can't do it the way they used to do it anymore. I think the realm of political removal that we've seen from the CIA and other agencies throughout the years is different. And that the same goes for how people get together and talk to one another. And there is no way, just look at what happened in Virginia we talked a lot about this because you and I penned an article together. Well, you wrote it, but I helped research about this. We're getting to a point, and they know it, where if they take certain actions, the tree of liberty is watered sometimes. We're trying to do it the right way, but you got to give us a little bit here. There's going to have to be accountability. Otherwise, we got to fix it. And you can't live in a country like this. You just can't. It's not America anymore.
No. And if you want to, I would encourage people to go read that article too, by the way, at UncoverDC. It's called The Curious Case or The Curious Activity of George Soros in Virginia.
Yep.
Something like that.
Yep.
You can search for that on uncoverdc.com. And it's amazing what Mr. George Soros did with finances to get some people in there. And he's trying to collapse our country from the bottom up.
Yeah. And we had a great day that day. We spent hours together just kind of on Zoom researching and sharing stuff together. And at the end of the day, he's behind everything. He's even behind the Parnas indictment. So there's a lot with Soros trying to whittle his way in. I
was on the phone with somebody yesterday doing an interview and found out he was active in Texas too. So yeah, he's all over. He's all over.
Yep.
Well, he's yeah, we'll talk more about him in times to come. All right, next item. This was off Mad World News, another independent website, and not all of these places are reputable. You need to read and be intelligent. But anyways, this is it's over. I hate clickbait. I hate hyperbole in headlines just to get people to. But anyways, Hollywood elites melt down as Democrats are denied new witnesses. And the big quote here was they quote Rosie O'Donnell, they quote Bette Midler.
The usual characters.
Yes. And here's Rob Reiner, meathead from All in the Family.
Yep.
I'm dating myself here, but
not too much.
Russian hoax conspiracy theorist Rob Reiner claimed we are throwing away the Constitution. And he made a wild accusation that Trump is an indicted criminal.
Oh.
And that this is the first time we are letting a criminal walk.
Oh, really?
The first thing that came to mind was Jesse Smollett. So I just thought,
the list is never ending, especially in his industry.
Exactly. He says the Republicans in the United States Senate just flushed the Constitution down the toilet. For the first time in history, the American jurisprudence, an indicted criminal who's been proven guilty without any doubt is allowed to walk.
What?
A republic if you can keep it.
Yeah, a republic. They don't even know what the word republic means.
They don't.
It's gross. What they're saying there is like, I made it akin to this. It's like the way that when the Democrats talk about the Constitution, it's like you're throwing holy water on a demon. Like they sizzle, like that's what it reminds me of in my head. Like I feel that, like whenever they start invoking the Constitution, if we took 10 Democrat policies and put them up next to the Constitution, all of their policy platform would be gone.
You are spot on. You're spot on. So that's why it's been hilarious and sad and tragic to hear Nancy Pelosi quoting the Constitution. As I said in one of my columns, I said, Satan quotes the Bible.
Yeah.
that doesn't make him a follower of Christ, right?
That's exactly right.
So.
Oh, goodness.
All right.
We're doing it, Daniel. We're doing it.
We are. All right. We're going to wrap this up fast. How? I guess when I'm talking by myself, I just talk too much.
Well, I interrupt sometimes. That's a problem.
This is interesting. Tennessee state lawmaker proposes labeling CNN and Washington Post fake news. I think it's Lamar Alexander who said,
really?
Yeah.
Before he.
Tennessee. Hang on. No. I'm wrong on that. No, he's the one that said that he's not going to vote for witnesses. I'm mixing my stories up here. This guy is a representative in the House there in Tennessee. James Micah Van Huss introduced a resolution targeting CNN and the Washington Post. The resolution is that the state of Tennessee recognizes CNN and the Washington Post as fake news and part of the media wing of the Democratic Party. I have filed HJR 779 on behalf of a constituency that's tired of fake news and Republicans who don't fight. Go figure. Well, I think that's very true. A lot of Republicans don't fight. And I think I was listening to your podcast, you and Frank the other day, and the podcast I'm referring to by the Dark to Light podcast. If you've not listened to Dark to Light, you need to listen to that. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But I think it was Frank who was talking about how, and I could be wrong, but most Democratic candidates are entertainers. They're flamboyant, they get up, they engage people, and most Republican candidates are like bookkeepers. They get up and just talk facts and whatnot. You get the occasional, Ted Cruz, whatnot, and Donald Trump, who's an entertainer. And I think that's the Republican Party been missing, that kind of engagement with people. But anyways, going back to the story, fake news. What do you think of that? Should we label them fake news?
They're already labeled fake news. We don't need a piece of legislation to do it for us.
I find it interesting that he's actually submitting it's not going to pass, obviously. But I think he's doing a great job to call attention to it, because they are the media arm of the Democratic Party. That's what he says.
They're big, massive public relations firm for the Democrats.
Yeah.
I guess to go back to what you said about the energy or whatever of the people in the Republican Party, you know that things are beginning to shift when you start to see, you hear of TikTok before?
My daughter's on TikTok a lot.
So my daughter's on TikTok. My son is now on TikTok, even though I've given them the lecture about it being Chinese spycraft. So they're on TikTok, and I get to go on TikTok too. I've done a few of them. We won't talk about, but I've they're pretty funny. But I've been watching, and you know what TikToks are kind of like going viral now? It's almost like the cool kids in class are the ones, or the bad kids that you want to be friends with are the ones that are doing like Trump commercials on TikTok. They're getting the most hits. The conservative, like, they had to literally ban live action. So we're taking over for young kids in their teens and in their early 20s. It's not cool anymore to be a liberal. It's a much cooler thing to be a conservative because they're so hated.
You are spot on about this. My family will sit, my daughter's 17, and my wife and I and her will sit around and talk about various things. And we had a conversation about so many millennials. We got, 38% of the population wants a socialist president, which is scary. But my daughter's going, that's not going to change because so many people in my generation are conservative. We're tired of this liberal stuff.
Yep.
And so, yeah, TikTok especially, there's so much conservative stuff on there. My thing that I saw on TikTok, it was a news piece I saw a couple weeks ago. Some nurse has hundreds of thousands, maybe even 1 million plus followers on TikTok. And she was talking about, she did a video that she didn't say a word. She just stood there and pointed, and then she superimposed the words. And the words were, the best way to prevent getting a sexually transmitted disease is abstinence.
Yeah.
Save sex for marriage. It was banned.
Of course.
She was criticized. I was like, how can you criticize that? So anyways, yeah, I agree with you that the new generation coming up, the under millennial, the Gen Xers, or whatever you're going to call them, Gen Zers, I'm sorry.
Because they look at it like they're doing something wrong, and then they're learning the values as they do something wrong. That's what it is. It's attractive for them to do something bad and like edgy, and you know what I mean? Being a conservative right now is one of the most edgy things that you could possibly be. So we're doing it.
It's kind of funny. I'm glad to see it. It's time for you to go. I know you have something you have to get to. So I want to say thank you so much for being my first guest on the New Book of Daniel podcast.
Yay.
We'll do this again in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, I would love to. It's fun.
And have a good day, and we'll catch you. Oh, by the way, how do people get a hold of you?
You can go to @Tracy Beanz with a Z on Twitter. You could go to UncoverDC.com, or you can go to, that's it. That's good.
So, @Tracy Beanz.
Yeah, and then YouTube. I have YouTube. I have Gab. I have Parler. I have every social media. It's all Tracy Beanz. You can find me anywhere, basically.
And UncoverDC has a Facebook page as well, right?
Yep. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of it.
Okay. So UncoverDC or Tracy Beanz with a Z.
Yep.
Beanz. As you say in your podcast, Beans!
Beans!
Which is kind of fun. All right. Tracy, thank you so much for joining
Thanks, Daniel.
Have a good day.
You too.
Okay, that was my interview with Tracy Beanz from UncoverDC.com. And I'm so glad that she was able to stop by and spend some time with me and talk about the impeachment. I would just look forward to having more information from her in the future on this. If you want to find out more about Tracy's stuff, check out her Dark to Light podcast, Dark to Light. It's called Frank and Beans. And she works with Frank there in New York, and he's got lots of great insights as well. So check out that podcast, available on all podcast channels as well as YouTube. And you can also check out my stuff at UncoverDC.com, my political columns that show up there. If you have an idea for the podcast, you got an article you want me to consider for the 5 and 15, just send it to me at newbookofdaniel@outlook.com. That's newbookofdaniel@outlook.com. If you want to check out my podcast, I mean my blog, sorry, it's newbookofdaniel.com for my blog. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, simply @newbookofdaniel. My name is Daniel Bobinski. I've been your host on this podcast, and I'm really glad that you were here. If you have anything else to say, like I said, send me an email. Other than that, we'll catch you guys on the next podcast. Have a great day.